Happy New Year, everyone.
There are levels to everything.
We want you to lead us. That's why we're coming to you.
It looks crazy when you go backwards.
You're going to save a lot of money.
Possibly.
You can always come to us.
How would you do it?
What are we doing paying you money? Stay Sharp, episode 22. I'm Jordan Ray, and joining me is my other half, Rashad Tyler. We are the duo behind Raire Label, which also produces this podcast and supports fly brands from strategy to implementation. You're here to go to school on or just observe our experiences. And if you like what you see, make sure you click that subscribe button and totally feel free to hit us up if you need help with your projects. Happy New Year, everyone.
That's your New Year dance?
I guess. Did I do it okay?
I don't know. It's very Atlanta.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you've had a wonderful slowdown, or you've got caught up, or you've rested, whatever you needed. Yeah. Let's cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
We have
Happy
some
New
champagne.
Year to you.
Happy New Year. I love it. How are you feeling this new year?
Pretty good. I feel like there's so much work that we were able to get done and be able to ride a certain momentum for what we invested from a time and energy standpoint in December. Yeah. So today, I'm happy to be, in the spot that I'm in. And I'm glad that so many of our friends were available for us over the break.
Yeah. It feels fresh. It feels clean.
Yeah.
It feels crisp. I'm down for it. I'm ready for it. If you haven't already, definitely watch our habits episode. It's episode 19. We talked about some New Year's resolutions and some stuff that is getting on our nerves, some stuff that we want to do differently, some stuff that we're proud of, that we want to continue doing. So go back and watch that as well. Today we have 6 categories we want to break down. If you are planning to get into some business, branding, marketing, strategy, and you are wearing a lot of hats and you're doing all of the things, we want to break down when and why you should start doing stuff yourself before you just outsource everything and you're paying for contractors or to hire team members that you don't necessarily need. So we're going to give you some pointers on how to do things yourself, and also when you should get someone else to do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Starting off with brand identity. This is something that we all need. We talk about this a lot on our podcast because we're brand people and we do this. We've never outsourced brand identity. There's a time and a place for that. But something you should be aware of if you're doing your brand yourself, a pro to this is that you're going to save a lot of money.
Possibly.
The cons is that you're going to have to redo it at some point anyways, unless you're a brand identity designer. And then it's not going to save you any money. It's probably going to cost you. But at that time, I think that there's, and maybe you can shed some light on this, but I think that there's a time and a place you get to in your business and you'll know, yes, I should now invest in a design team to do my brand identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you do a good job of kind of considering different levels of investor or creator or leader or founder. Mm-hmm. I believe if it's your first time doing anything, yeah, you should do it yourself. If you're in a spot where you already have some audience and you have some reputation, then you probably should, outsource.
Yeah.
I think that there's a cost for doing things wrong.
Yeah.
That sometimes is undercalculated by folks, and hopefully, you're intelligent about how you think about your time and your money, because opportunity cost is as real as real cash.
My advice to you is that if you're doing your own brand identity, to really get acquainted with what a brand identity is and all of the layers, all of the background, and some of the heart of why you need one, how you should position it, what are all the other layers, because then you have brand language that goes into that. You have the actual collateral, the assets, you have digital assets, you have physical assets, and really understanding and getting your mind wrapped around what are all those pieces and how do I want that to communicate? How do I prepare myself? How do I skill myself up to be able to create this thing from a logo system, because one logo is not enough, to color palette, to typography, researching a little bit about what different typographies are going to express. Some are a little bit more loud and bold or colorful, playful, and then some feel a little bit more sterile or minimal, and why you want to pick certain things for your brand. I think getting up to speed on those things is huge when you're building a brand identity and doing it yourself. And then taking that to the next level and putting that into a brand guide and going through asset by asset, page by page, use case by use case, and creating a document. This is called a brand book or a brand Bible. You'll see it called different places, different things. But going through and illustrating how you use those assets. This is how our logo is to be used. These are what colors are to be used together. This is how the fonts are supposed to go together. And when you hand that off to a team member at some point, the social media manager or content creator, the web designer, they're able to reference that and build on your brand.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to know that point blank period when you're designing your own brand identity. But to Rashad's point, or to your point, definitely start out doing it yourself before you invest, depending on where you're at. But I think it helps to at least do some stuff on the side.
Well, and the thing is like, if there's somebody who is similar to myself, you've been around a while, right? You already have some reputation. You can't put anything out that doesn't meet a certain threshold. So if you don't already have those skills, you have to outsource, right? Because it's not going to be good enough, right? And if it's not going to be good enough, meaning the people that are already aware of you, if they can't be impressed by it, then, you can't afford it. So you don't have the luxury of testing your skills, when you're at that position, or at least I don't perceive so, right? There's a world where you may decide that it's best to burn all bridges and start from ground zero. Have at it. But I think if you've built a reputation, it's much harder to do that. So I would very strongly suggest that you keep doing what you've already done well, especially if you've built trust with people, and find other high-level contributors to maintain, if not increase, the momentum that you've created for yourself. And even if you are a current business owner and you have something going, if you have an A-level executive or an A-level executive execution team connected to your business or brand or what have you, it looks crazy when you go backwards. Mm-hmm. You're bound to have people off board or kind of go away if you do a bad rebrand. I mean, we saw that rebrand effort that Uber had, right? Yeah. And people kind of, acted crazy about that. So you got to be really careful with maintaining your look and feel and how you communicate to people.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big one, to not go backwards and to understand from the top down how that needs to communicate. But moving on into something that we're currently working through.
Yeah.
Packaging.
Oof.
Packaging is it's a learning curve. You actually, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, I'm just trying to segue, but you have a print background, right? You have a lot of things that you walked away with, a lot of technical skills on the print side that I think help you a lot with understanding packaging and not being so intrepidated by, the mock-ups and how in the end that it's produced. So how would you say, what are the pros and cons for sure of doing your packaging yourself, but also when should you outsource that?
So I think DIY packaging is really a thing, right? Especially if you have a simple product. You got candy, right? The most important thing for you to do is get the recipe right. figure out how to batch the product, see if people like how it tastes. So you shouldn't spend your money on branding until you really figured out product.
Tested, yeah.
Yeah, because that's the most important thing. And that's probably the best advice across the board, regardless of what you're creating. Make sure that the business is firm. You understand what your creative, if not competitive advantages are. And so that you can really be confident about what you're going to deliver to people. And after that has its own legitimacy, then you walk into, hey, I need to make this look good because I already have confidence that this will scale on its own. We need to start putting together the pieces that will help us, move things along. That would, in some cases, just be branding, web, those kinds of things. In some cases, it may also include production. You may need to literally find other people to take your recipes and scale it through industrial kitchens or whatever it is. Again, still staying with this food or like candy kind of analogy.
So that, I feel like that's more on the product side.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. And then, I mean, that could be
the
totally a
piece.
part of the conversation. But yeah, the product side, like when to do your product in-house. We've had this conversation. I mean, that's what you just really talked about. You didn't talk so much about packaging.
Well,
I mean, I understand you're like the product comes first, but I'm like, what if you already have the product?
What if you already have the product?
Yeah, and you want to, what's the benefit, the pro of doing your own packaging?
Yeah. After you've proven your product, like you definitely shouldn't be doing your own packaging because it just takes like expert level understanding, especially if you have a chance to get into retail.
Yeah.
Because if you get into retail and you haven't really vetted and used tried and true methods of not testing to see what type of branding will react with new audiences that don't have the luxury of knowing you personally or knowing a friend, you got to be able to jump off the shelves to people and compete in those types of visual marketplaces that have fast reactions. You think, why is it so hard for cereals to like really infiltrate the aisle when Tony the Tiger is still there and Captain Crunch is still there? Like the branding and the way that those boxes look and the way that those cartoons and those characters look and the money that's been put behind them over years, you got to try to stand out amongst that.
Yeah.
So if you go in and respectfully, like your Master P, you go, oh, I know why Snoop cereal is doing much better than my own, the one that has my face.
Yeah. Because
it looks and feels better to the general consumer and he can draw a different type of conversation than you can. And that is 100% not a product thing. That is a packaging thing.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Just shining a little bit of light on your opinion there.
Yeah.
The next thing, something that I want to outsource at some point. I don't want to outsource it because I don't want to make it sound like, I'm trying to spend some money or whatever. But eventually I do want to be able to be in a position where we're outsourcing copywriting. We've always kept that in-house. The pro to that, I think the pro to doing a lot of stuff in-house is that you learn and you save money. Eventually, you'll scale or you'll grow to when you do need to hire a professional to do that. Copywriting, even to piggyback on that, contracts and agreements and actually having a professional who is managing that for us, project to project, partner to partner, client to client. I think that would be something that would be really beneficial soon. It's probably something fairly, soon in the future that we'll be able to outsource, but I'm looking forward to that because the cons of it right now is to have to write every piece of copy while your mind is thinking about a lot of different things and having a person or a team that can manage your copywriting for this is, social and emails, even getting into some of the legal copy would be really helpful. I think that would take a weight off of things. I mean, I'm not complaining.
And just for context, like there are levels to copywriting. There are levels to everything. But like great copywriting firms or a great copywriter understands sales, understands marketing, understands script writing. There's a lot of layers to that. So there are people who are going like, Chat GPT is going, it's the tool that a professional copywriter is going to use to make themselves even more efficient and faster because they know what the prompts need to be.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand the prompts, like there's no way you can write, top shelf, conversion copywriting. It's just really, really hard to do.
I'm always amazed when I see amazing copy.
And people don't necessarily even know. They just go like, oh, yeah.
You could feel it though.
Because it moves you.
Yeah, it moves you. You have a feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that, I'm just excited, just being transparent about that. We do, every piece of copy that we have, we write it in-house. But I'm like, how would someone else put their spin on this? That would be really cool.
Yeah.
To be determined.
Yeah, we had a great conversation about it yesterday. I was impressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be determined on that. Up next is marketing strategy. You do a lot of this in-house, but let us know how to approach this and when to hire a strategist to lead you.
I'm a strategist you hire.
Hire him.
But I think that the best way to figure out if you need to outsource your marketing strategy is whether or not you're having success growing, scaling, or positioning your business. Like if you know you can't do that and your expertise is elsewhere, then focus down on your thing. The way that you actually create marketing or the way that marketing becomes most valuable to you is to have an outstanding product anyway. So if you're a product person and you're an elite product person, you're not going to depend on marketing, right? So I think the way to figure out when you should and shouldn't hire is really narrow to your individual skill set. And you have to pay attention and be honest about what is going to be necessary for you to add on, subtract, or reconsider possibly. Because sometimes you might hire somebody and go like, yo, we didn't actually need that. We needed to improve our product.
Yeah.
So you just have to pay attention to, again, what it's going to come down to, but self-examination around that is going to be key, because a lot of people believe that the PR piece is the most important part of their marketing. There's a lot of people who might believe that the photography is a part of it. So you have to be careful not to overassign value because of your lack of understanding of the broad impact that all of the individual touch points may or may not converge to make a cohesive story for any of your potential customers, clients, or otherwise.
Yeah, good roundup. Next is administrative work. We have outsourced this before, and we have been the outsource before, if I'm saying that right. The pros to doing it yourself is, I think that administration and things like operations and just organization, the back end of stuff is always important to know regardless. And when you're a small team, you do it in-house anyways. You just kind of figure it out, or you stumble into it when you get so busy, or you just have so many people that you need to communicate with, or so many things you need to organize. And then all of a sudden you're doing administrative work.
Yeah.
You're file keeping, and you're making calls, or you're just doing different things, right? The time that we did outsource administrative work, it didn't really go so well. And I think that Rashad and I learned a lot about ourselves, about the things that we didn't have, or the things that we should have in place next time. And it was tough because that was a hard lesson learned. But yeah, it didn't go so well. So we're definitely in the learning things on that. There's so many other things that we do well. And to your point, you just mentioned earlier, stick with the stuff that sometimes you do well. And we do administrative work well.
Mm-hmm.
There was just a moment where we had got so inundated with tasks, and just there was a lot of projects that were moving, and we needed that extra support. And I don't regret it at all. Yeah,
because it shined a light on our weaknesses and like our lack of having built systems that we can pass off. But the problem also was we weren't expert enough to understand how to hire. So now on the other side, like we know enough to know that we need to have systems that are tight enough that we can pass off to employees or contractors. And more importantly, we know who we shouldn't hire anymore. Because if you can't lead us, then we can't hire you. If the area that you're being brought on, you can't be a subject matter expert, then we can't hire you. So if you hire us, we're going to probably show you a bunch of things that you hadn't considered. Mm-hmm. And that's usually what comes when you add an expert in any part of your business.
Mic drop, whatever. Because I think that that's a great way to put it, is us learning a lot about hiring in general. And that was a big eye opener.
Yeah.
Was, whoa, if you're not able to actually legitimately be the subject matter expert, what are we doing paying you money? Like, it was, you know, it's strange, but we have to check ourselves around that, because I think going into other conversations with other contractors and going forward is, we want you to lead us. That's why we're coming to you, instead of you depending on our systems. Because what if our systems aren't the best?
Right.
But if you don't have one at all, or you don't even know that a system is needed for that, then we're just literally double paying to pay you to learn how to do something that you should have already learned how to do. And then we also learning how to do it, and
establish.
Now we got 3 people doing the administrative role, and it's just not.
That's right.
Not a thing. So
yeah.
Last thing is video production. We do our share of that. We've done our share of that. Video is so important. But I'll pass that to you, Rashad. You know, we keep a lot of it in-house, but we've outsourced.
Yeah, we outsource because, I mean, we know enough to know who's who and who knows what. But we're also marketers, and a part of our responsibility for bringing high quality capture to clients is having known enough about the space. So I'm a novice photographer, novice videographer, novice editor, you know, all the rest of that, but an expert designer, and I'm solid in graphic post. But even inside of that, a basic understanding for most things is good enough. When you are shooting something that needs to be at a high level, again, you need to be competent enough to hire. And for what we do, we have to know. We can't pull off a production like this, then we got no business being in a spot to tell you who you should hire for a high level production, because you just don't know enough to advise.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be like a good basic high level of competence, because there's a tremendous difference between what we're producing and what Mr. Beast is producing. And so the level of expert that he needs to hire to do those massive crane shots and all of that high level post production work, those take or require really high level creative people. And he can only source and figure out who those people are because he needed to be competent enough to attract them, because they don't want to work with somebody who don't know what the hell to ask them for and can't truly appreciate what it is that they bring to the table. So I almost don't necessarily want to talk to your CMO if your CMO isn't good in some area of creative. Ours, or mine in particular, just happens to be inside of Photoshop and just the more design piece of it. But the photographer is going to love to talk to me. The videographer is going to love to talk to me because he's going to feel confident that what he does is seen because I've been in his shoes.
Yeah. I feel like the moral of the conversation so far is to do everything yourself first, give it a swing. And especially depending on the state and your situations, everything is dependent on where you at in your business. That's on your projects. But attack everything yourself, even if you're doing it and you know you're going to later outsource it. Don't worry about it at the time being. Gather the skills, because it helps you speak to the next person that you're going to work with and really understand, you know, what they need. All of this creative marketing, branding, business stuff, all of this stuff is such a 360 loop. You know, you can't have sales if things don't look good. And if things don't look good, you're not going to have eyeballs. And if you don't have eyeballs, you can't get your message to people. And so it just keeps going around this hamster wheel. And I know we only picked 6 categories to talk about. There's a lot of other things to talk about. But in this new year, do it yourself. Do it yourself. You can always come to us if you need a pep talk, or if you're ready for support. We're here for sure. But I think we're also wanting to make sure that as much as we want to support and work on projects and contribute to all of the things around us, there's a responsibility that we have to encourage you all to do it yourself. Make your own brand identity. Do your own administrative work. You don't need an assistant. You need maybe a project management software, whatever that looks like. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, edit your own videos. Absolutely.
I think there's one of my favorite stories to tell, or parables to tell, is one that I borrowed from, I forgot who shares with me. I always attribute Wayne Barrow for a lot of things. But anyway, the guy tells me, hey, if you were trying to hire a Russian interpreter, how would you do it? And I'm looking at him like, I have no idea even where this weird ass question is coming from. So he goes, well, do you speak Russian? And I'm like, no. He was like, well, don't you think it would be a challenge for you to figure out if the Russian interpreter is any good? And so you have to use that particular analogy to figure out what we're saying in a more precise way relative or germane to what problem you're hoping to outsource someone to solve on your behalf. You need to be competent enough to know whether or not they're useful, or hire a consultant to help you find the right person. So the reason that somebody's in the chief marketing officer role is because they're a subject matter expert that the CEO is depending on to help them make creative decisions for that reason, because they wouldn't and they shouldn't be in a position where they are trying to understand whether or not the Russian interpreter actually speaks Russian.
Yeah, I've always liked that parable.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't speak Russian, how do you know how to hire somebody? So that's literally what we're saying.
Yeah.
Do it yourself, learn how to speak Russian so you can then pass it on.
That's right. That's right. And so at least for us, and I think this is fair to say, we really want to be helpful for way more people than we're currently able to help. Like, we're not going to do 50 or 60 projects in a given year. We're probably going to do maybe half of that. Right. And we're going to work with maybe about that many clients on an annual basis. So based on that idea, we want to work with only the best, and we want to help the best come to the top. So if you're just beginning, or you kind of are circling the bases, or kind of wondering what things you may need to know, we're going to do our best to release or kind of share better resources to help tool you, prepare you for onboarding with us, because if you're that good, then we want to be a part of your success story. And more importantly, there's also lots of other resources elsewhere. We don't want to pose as if we're the only option. We just know that there is not a lot of resources for people like us, that look like us, and who also have our taste. So we want to, make sure we lean in and fill in the gap.
100. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week. Make sure that you like, you comment, you subscribe.
Yeah.
And stay sharp.